Jaeden, GPT 5.2 is out. Remember when this used to be caused for like parades, when a new model would come out? And this just sort of came out pretty quick, kind of low key. Very curious to see what you're seeing. I'm sort of seeing reviews a little bit all over the place, but there's one thing that I sort of want to talk about on this podcast for sure, which is this. I think it's actually an eval. So evals, when you hear these things in terms, you guys might already know this, but evals are just the ways of testing sort of like how smart the model is. It's like, oh, it's smarter than this many PhDs. And there's just a whole lot of them, and they all have kind of like acronyms and all that kind of stuff. You don't really need to know that. But there is one, Jaeden, that I was sort of taken by, and even though I've only been testing it for about a day now, it's this GPT Val, like GPT Val. I don't know how you sort of say it, but I think it's the one GPT created. And it's this whole idea of like, how does this take over actual knowledge work? And this is the one that everybody seems to be freaking out about, because essentially this is the one that jumped up to like 70.9% or something like that. What that means is like it tied to like top industry professionals 70.9% of the time in terms of its ability to do real knowledge work. And that's up from, I think it's 38 or 39% from the last model. Essentially, it might have been GPT 5. I don't think it was 5.1. Point being, Jaeden, that's an interesting evaluation to me. What can it do in terms of actual knowledge work? Not how good it is in science or math or anything like that, but like how good does it do work? That was fascinating to me. But I know you were covering this as well. Like, I mean, Jaeden, do you get excited in these moments? Like, you're a total geek. You have AIbox.ai, which actually tests these models against each other for $19 a month. You can go to Jaden's thing. You can test Claude versus Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Grok versus everything else. So Jaeden does this all the time. So Jaeden, I'm talking a little bit too much here, but I wanted to kind of get a sense of whether you get excited about this, and if you do, what?
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to share my screen and do a couple things. Number one, I'll show what the responses on X have been, people's comments, because I feel like that's a really good baseline. Also, what Reddit is saying about it. Also, what my own personal experience testing it has said. But I'm going to start with an anecdote where essentially yesterday when it came out, I was in the middle of a conversation for, actually, to be honest, is a very important document. I was analyzing like a legal document for a contract I need to sign. And of course, I don't use lawyers anymore. I feel like I'm in the Wild West now.
Unsafe. This is not, wait, this is not advice.
This
Jaeden,
is not legal or financial advice.
I don't go to the doctor anymore.
Yeah, don't do anything I do. But it was interesting because the new model came out, and at the bottom of my chat, it was like, hey, a new model came out, start a new chat to use it. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of my chat. I'm not going to switch to a brand new model to like, and have to start over from scratch on this conversation. So I finished my conversation. I'm like, I'm sure GPT 5.1 that was available, 30 minutes before is just fine. And that moment for me kind of got into my head and made me realize, like, I think in the past when GPT-5 came out, I would have dropped everything to try GPT-5. This is going to be this huge, amazing flagship thing. And well, it feels like we're just doing 5, 5.1, 5.2. These incremental updates, they're nice, and there's probably some differences, but like I almost don't really notice any major differences here. I wonder if and so it gets me thinking, and I guess this is my question I'll pitch to you before I go through all of the comments over on X, but would you rather have a tech cycle where every month, essentially, you get a small incremental update to the model? Or do you like the model of like Google and Apple, where it's like every 6 months there's this big, huge, or once a year there's this big, huge tech conference where the new iPhone is unveiled and oh my gosh, it's like, 10 times better. But like, if they'd been making tiny little iPhone incremental updates throughout the year, would it just be boring by the end of the year? To see where it's at. What do you think is better for technology?
I heard a rumor that totally unsubstantiated, that 5.2 is actually what they wanted 5.0 to be. I don't know if you saw this too, with this idea that so why did they launch 5.0 when it was, obviously these things are all red teaming questions, right? But because it actually isn't so much based, I don't think, on we got to get this model. There's a little bit of this gamesmanship. Google I/O is about to happen, so OpenAI launches like Sora the day before, right? There's a certain amount of this, and then there was a certain amount of like, oh, this is in response. 5.2 is in response to the Red Alert that Sam Altman, was that what it's called, like the Red Alert, like Code Red. Sorry, Code Red. that Sam Altman declared. But obviously it's not, right? I mean, like these models are in the works. Like when you talk to people who are using these models since back in November, I mean, they're just red teaming them, right? They release them when it's safe. I much prefer this. I get on the consumer side, like, hey, the new iPhone is coming out September 17th, so just wait or something like that. But I love that these things just come out because I bop between ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. Essentially, I use Copilot for certain things, but for the most part, those are my sort of like that's my team, and all of them are sort of like trained on my memory. All of them are like really specifically trained on what I do and everything like that. And I love that they just kind of keep getting smarter and smarter. Like I don't want to wait for a release because I'm not like going to make a new purchase. Like I'm already a hyper subscriber to all these things, so I actually really, really appreciate how they do it. And even if GPT, 5.2, some people love it, some people are like, oh, whatever. What I do know is that it's smarter. And that's it. Like, even if it's behind the scenes, it'll kind of poke its head out a little bit when it's smarter. So that to me, I love the cadence of how it's released right now, to be honest.
Okay. I think for the consumer, I'm not going to lie, I think it is better to just have these small updates because basically, as soon as a small update's ready, you get it. Why would you wait 6 months? I kind of hate that cycle. But from a marketing perspective and from like oh my gosh, look at the new things it can do, like it's just so much. Like if you think like the top, 10 AI companies, like you could talk like 11 Labs for audio and like, some of the really cool, Flux models for image, like, or, Midjourney, right? Let's just say there's 20 of the top companies. And if every single one is having a small incremental update every single month, that's every 3 days, there's a new major update. And so it's just like so much for people to keep a hold of. So I think what's going to happen is people are going to get all the benefit. And I guess that's the good part. So you get all of the efficiency from it, but not as much of the hype, which is like
Right.
if you did every 6 months, like, oh my gosh, all these crazy things, you'd be really dialed in and you'd learn all of the crazy things that it could now do. So I think a
Yep.
lot of people are going to be using these models. They'll be less aware of what it's capable of doing, which from an educational perspective, I mean, it's kind of tricky, but like it's obviously way too much for anyone to keep track of
Yeah.
everything. I mean, even us
Yeah.
on the
Agreed.
podcast,
Agreed.
3 times a week, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Agreed.
agree with you. Okay. Over on Twitter or X, OpenAI was sharing. Well, okay, I got to tell you the first funny comment. If you just search for GPT 5.2 on X, the first post that is like ranking, which is a troll post. It's just like GPT 2.6 or 5.2 is AGI, and then literally the screenshot is him asking how many R's are in garlic, and it says there's 0 R's in garlic, and so it's like obviously getting it wrong. I will say though, this is probably a fake screenshot because I've seen so many of these, and I get engagement baited by them all the time, where they're like, it did like the dumbest thing in the world, but like basically these people will repost, like this post is probably reposted every time a new model has an update.
Right.
They just like change the name of the model, and he's like Gemini 3 is AGI, and then it's like
Yeah.
it doing something dumb. So, anyways, this is probably engagement bait, is all I'm saying, which is annoying. OpenAI's evaluations. There's something interesting. OpenAI's like official X account posted they're like the GPT 5.2 thinking evals. What I think is interesting is the number one evaluation that they're putting at the top, especially when you look at like in light of like the Code Red or whatever the OpenAI has, is the SWE Bench Pro. That's the software engineering one. I think this is interesting. The very top benchmark that they're like showing off to everybody is 55.6% on the SWE, compared to GPT 5.1 was at like 50.8%. So, I mean, they're almost like 5% higher. And of course,
Yeah.
they're showing that off against Claude Opus 4.5, which is at 52%. So Claude was beating GPT 5.1, and now 5.2 kind of squeaks out a win and gets a little bit over it. And it's quite a bit ahead of Gemini 3 Pro. I'm not sure how many developers are using Gemini 3 Pro. No shade, but it feels like on the benchmarks anyways, it's quite a bit behind
Yeah.
on that one. But the GPQA Diamond, it's crushing it almost 92%. The Gemini 3 is like literally almost as good as this Gemini 5.2. So like, anyways, they're all over the place. But the thing that was interesting about this to me was that the number one benchmark they were showing off in their tweet to the world was a software engineering one. And I think that just goes to show
Yeah.
how much software developers love the Claude models, and how
Yep.
OpenAI is trying as hard as they can to not get completely like killed from that industry
Yeah.
and removed from it. So to me, that was kind of interesting.
Well, but Jaeden, you have a software company. Like, what do your guys use in terms of coding and stuff like that?
Yeah, we use Claude, and like Claude, it's because it's not just the model, but they have Claude Code, which is it ties into your whole code base, and it's like it is essentially helping you write the code, and it automatically does a ton of stuff for you. It's amazing. So it's they've actually built software that makes their model more useful. They have a bunch of sneaky system prompts that basically make it so it can think through things a lot better than just if you were to go ask ChatGPT or someone else. So Claude's done, Anthropic's done a lot of really good work on that. What I will say is like here when you're going 50.8% was GPT 5.1, 52% Claude Opus 4.5. Okay, yay, Claude Opus is the winner. Then GPT 5.2 comes out and it's like 55.6%. Like, I just feel like we're making these little 3% differences. If I have my whole code base and my whole system
Right.
and all my developers are trained on one tool for a 3% increase, like
Yeah.
whatever, I'm going to stick here. If you can, if you can knock it out of the park by like 10, 15, 20%, then like, okay, let's go look at that. But I think it's going to be hard. Like no one wants to be behind, but I think a lot of people are kind of set on what they're going to use. And if there's something that's 3% better, no one really cares.
No, I think that's so well said, and I can wrap it on this. I guess the idea here is that when you see these new models coming out, I think Gemini 3 actually felt pretty powerful. I think Claude 4.5 Opus actually felt pretty powerful. And I love ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time. But I think what people need to know out there, as we're sort of like coming back to our name of AI applied, is that these, as Jaden just said, like a little kind of like bump in this. We get asked all the time, like, well, which is the best? I'm like, I wouldn't think of it like that. They're all phenomenal. It's just like what works best for you. And I think the reason that coding is so huge is because it's a one-to-one thing of like people used to code this way and now they code this way. But most people aren't coders, right? Most people are doing a lot of like writing and brainstorming and all that kind of stuff. And just each one is different. People love the voice of different ones. It's just different. Everybody I know uses a different tool and absolutely swears by it. So it's cool. I mean, 5.2 came out. I think it's great. I think it's interesting. But when they talk about like, oh, it can now take this many, tasks, people aren't doing it anyway, right? It's
Yeah.
not like that's actually happening out in the real world. So it's not really that useful in a way. Do you know what I mean? Except that maybe it's sort of a more useful companion and it'll keep getting better. Nothing earth shattering here. I think it's sort of like fun to track these models, but otherwise, like, I thought this was cool. I'm going to track it. I'm going to be testing out a lot. Like I think I'm feeling that it's a little bit better, but maybe that's just the few things I've done today. So I don't know, nothing earth shattering here, but I love that they just like dropped it right before Christmas, and Sam Altman has promised more stuff.
Yep,
That's
I
sort
am
of like all
excited
we
for the
got today.
Christmas presents that will be coming in from Sam
Yes, yes,
Altman,
yes.
allegedly. All right, thanks everyone so much for tuning into the show today. If you want to make sure that your organization is up to date with the latest in AI and is looking at the right frameworks on how to approach AI so you're actually getting the most out of it, make sure to go check out Connor's AI mindset course that's linked in the description. I have seen companies completely change the way they work and the productivity has gone through the roof after taking this course. They will buy thousands of seats for everyone in the organization once they pilot it with a couple people. So that's always exciting to see. Anyways, check it out. There's a link in the description. It will absolutely revolutionize. And I know that's like a buzzword, but it actually will. How you're using AI. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next show.